We are live. I have a pulse. Hi,
Are you?
everybody. Meteorologist
Yeah.
Joe Cioffi with
And Joe Rayo, the other Joe.
the other Joe, which makes
Yeah.
us Joe and Joe. You know what I'm going to do here? Let me see if I don't screw this up. I always have you on the left side of the screen. I'm going to put you on the right side.
Oh, really?
Yes. Uh,
In other words, this is a right-wing conspiracy. I
oh,
know it.
stop it. No politics. And that goes to everybody on the chat board too. I know, this is going to be I know it's an election year and I know these things can stir passions. Not here, okay? No politics. We are a politic-free zone. All right? So
Yes,
let
indeed.
so let's keep it that way. Oh, this for some reason, hang on. I got to make you bring you to the top and then shrink you down a little bit. No, that's not good. You don't work on the right side. I got to put you on the left side.
Okay.
Okay,
I
so
like the left. I like being on the left.
there you go. So you're there on the left, and I'm here on the right. Okay, so uh, welcome on President's Day. A nice holiday weekend. Turned out to be a pretty decent day with sunshine and high clouds. I don't think there'd be too much. Shouldn't be much in the way of complaining here,
No
right?
complaints whatsoever from this vantage point.
Has
Um,
hasn't rained in 4 days. What are we gonna do?
well, I don't know. I started up my snowblower today just for the heck of it.
And
I haven't used it since the 19th of January and figured, well, might as well give it a workout. So I started it up, went all the way down the driveway. I have a very long driveway,
yes, you
and brought it
do.
back up and around again. So it started on time. It works perfectly. And now the big question is, will I have to use it at all between now and let's say the end of March? That is still a question yet to be answered.
Okay, well, we'll see. In all, from even though the weather is relatively quiet tonight, a couple of serious matters going on. The first off is they've had a ton of rain across the south and the deep south, and it looks like they're going to get another ton of rain here as we move through this week. This next cold front coming through here tomorrow is going to stall out across the southern states. And then uh, what might wind up being, and I'm not 100% sure whether this is going to happen yet, but what might wind up being the ultimate insult and slap in the face for snow lovers in the I 95 urban corridor would be that if we wind up Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with so much cold and dry air that it overwhelms everything in the east, which it's going to do, and then you're going to get a wave on this front that's going to develop off the southeast coast, and you're going to wind up with snow in North Carolina, South Carolina, possibly in northeast Georgia, and possibly as far north as southern Virginia. But you probably won't see anything more than the northern extent of high clouds reaching up into New Jersey or maybe New York City and Long Island. Now, if that winds up being the case, this would be um, the ultimate slap in the face, in my never to be humble opinion.
Shades of the winter of 73. That's pretty much what I remember from 73 are periods when we got cold and then periods when we had the setup for possibly some snow or precipitation, and all of it always seemed to move off to our south.
All right.
And
All right.
that's
So look, I'm going to give everybody a warning here. I'm having signal issues tonight, so I'm on my hotspot, and I am down to the last 10% of my allotment for the month. So if you wind up losing here, I will attempt to switch back to the regular internet connection, and hopefully it'll be working. But this is an ongoing problem here during the evening hours on some nights where they slow it down for whatever reason. But let's get going here with respect to what's happening. So we've got this weather system coming across the Great Lakes, Joe, and moving through the Northeast tomorrow. That's going to be another one that produces snow in the spots that in where they've been getting snow. I-90 in North and upstate New York, and for interior northern New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, and for Maine. And we've got winter weather advisories up again for the state of Maine and northeastern New Hampshire. Some peppering of advisories in upstate New York. Might be a few more up on the table as we move through tomorrow. We'll probably put a few more up. And we've got winter weather advisories up in western Michigan, much of Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa. The first flood watches are up for central Mississippi, and there's going to be a whole lot more flash flood watches up when with the next wave. Otherwise, the rest of the country, save for 2 counties in Wyoming and 3 counties in Nebraska, western Nebraska, where there are winter weather advisories. Other than that, it's very, very quiet across the country.
Not seeing very much of anything locally again, Joe. And tomorrow will be. The thing about tomorrow, I know that there have been forecasts out there that tomorrow we're going to have temperatures close to 50. However, there should be a little bit of a disclaimer with that because I think that for much of the day tomorrow, we're going to be looking at temperatures, at least here in the lower Hudson Valley, a lot close to the 40. And if we do get close to 50 tomorrow, that's probably not going to come until about this time tomorrow night, the first half of tomorrow night. We have to wait for a warm front to move through our area and allow for some milder southerly winds to get in here. But again, that may not come until the end of the day tomorrow or tomorrow evening. So much of the day tomorrow probably will be hovering, I think, more like low 40s. And then
Right.
we'll probably see temperatures climb up close to 50 during the first half of tomorrow night after that warm front moves on through. And after the warm front moves on through, we get into that milder air. The precipitation we'll see tomorrow, and it's going to be mostly light. It's not going to be anything significant or very heavy. And you're going to have to go pretty well to the north, maybe well north of 84 to get any kind of snow signature. But really, it's going to be kind of a block kind of day tomorrow overall, I think,
Yeah,
in
I
terms of cloud cover, precip, temperature. Not a great day compared to what we had out there today, which was gorgeous.
Yeah, I totally agree. Probably we'll see the temperatures rise up a little sooner down down near the coast and heading down into southern New Jersey and points south. The moisture stream that's running through the Great Lakes, it's nothing really to write home about. There's a southern stream of moisture running through the Gulf states, but that really doesn't get all that involved with the low that's moving to the north. And you can start to see some high clouds in the southern parts of Baja California and into Mexico. So that's that subtropical jet. And then you just start to see some of that moisture start streaming into Texas and setting up the rains for the deep south for the middle part of next week, of this week, I'm sorry. And WPC, Joe, has another band of 3, 4, and maybe even some 5-inch rains over the next 7 days from East Texas across northern Louisiana, central Mississippi, where they've had tremendous amounts of flooding. The Pearl River is at 36 flood stage at 36 feet, and it's probably going to come down a little bit, but more rain's coming. And then into Alabama and Georgia, the mountains start to cut off as you go further to the north. I mean, over north from the northern mid-Atlantic states to southern New England, it's basically about a quarter to a half an inch of liquid being indicated by WPC with higher amounts as you head up into into New England, central New England, and parts of upstate New York. Also, the Pacific Northwest seeing some additional rains, but not nearly as extreme as what's going on in the southern states. Just want to point out from the standpoint of snow, I've got WPC's 72-hour probability of at least 2 inches, and the first blue line is 40%, and that covers a small portion of north central PA and western New York, cuts along or just north of I-90, southern Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and then of course you get the amount probability going up to 95%. And with respect to the end of the week, Joe, WPC does not seem to be too overly excited about snow in the south in the Carolinas. I've got the map up, and you will see it. There is one. Let me zoom in a small in a count in whatever county that is northeast of Rocky Mount, North Carolina. There is this little green blob that they're indicating the possibility that there could be the equivalent of a quarter of an inch of liquid that's either snow or sleet. They don't have any kind of widespread area up for the south at this point, at this stage of the game. And actually, through much of this week, and other than what's going on now, just looking out in the long range for Friday, the whole country doesn't show any probability of a couple of inches of snow. Saturday, some stuff shows up way up in the Pacific Northwest, into the Rockies on Sunday. That first one was for Saturday, then for Sunday, and then for Monday. It's all pretty much in the West, and also a little bit in the Appalachians. So weather prediction center not overly enthused or overly bullish by the goings on with whatever's happening this week snow wise.
Well, if you go to the Weather Prediction Center, I know you're on it right now, and go to day 3 to 7 CONUS,
Right,
continental
which is what
U.S.
I have.
Right, and then go to precipitation probabilities and go to 12-hour forecasts
Okay, I'm
and
doing
click on that, and then click over to click over to day 4. Um, that
right.
would be the second day 4 graphic, which would indicate it would be centered on 0Z Saturday,
Gotcha.
February
12.
22nd.
Yeah, I can see the probabilities here. Zero,
And I mean, it's
almost
Goose Egg City.
pretty
It's Goose
much.
Egg from coast to coast.
Pretty much. We've got a couple of ones in upstate New York. Yeah, it is very quiet. Um, uh, Higher probabilities along the southeast coast, higher probabilities along the east coast of Florida in the 20 to 30% range there, and up in the Pacific Northwest. Just want to see the period right before that. Yeah, the probabilities obviously are higher here. I mean, they're showing 20 and 30% probabilities in the Carolinas, 50 to 60% along the immediate coastline. So, yeah, I mean, precip wise this week and storm wise this week, nothing, no major events, except that we're going to watch to see if this flat wave idea comes to be for later this week with the cold air bleeding down through the Mid Atlantic states. A shot that there could be, if you listen, we just saw not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, parts of northeast Georgia getting 6 to 8 inches from a little upper air disturbance, basically very flat wave that moved along, and there was just enough cold air. There'll be a bit more cold air at play here that gets down into the southeastern part of the U.S. So not impossible that if you get a decent wave to develop out of this, that you could see a few inches paralyze the southern cities.
Well, this high pressure cell that's going to be building in behind the little bit of unsettled weather we have tomorrow is exceedingly large and very extensive, and it will cover a good part of the United States and keep most areas dry. I mean, I was looking at the winter weather outlook from the folks over at the Weather Prediction Center, and for day 2 and day 3, they have no chance of any area in the continental or the contiguous United States of receiving anything along the lines of 8 or 12 inches of snow. That's pretty amazing when you consider that there are places like the Cascades that, at a drop of a hat will dump a bit of snow, or in parts of the Rockies. But for 2 or 3 days, that'll be for day 3 is Wednesday, day 2 is tomorrow, day
Right.
3 is Wednesday through Thursday. It's just incredibly quiet
Well,
for
yeah,
what's normally October.
I got the GFS up with the 1046 high in northeastern South Dakota, just kind of stretched out east west from New England all the way back west to the Rockies and beyond. It stretches all the way to the west coast. So that cold high is dominating everywhere. Now it does bring some a little bit of upslope snows for Colorado, and those are always fun. And this is where it picks up on this wave during Thursday that uh, produces some snow in North Texas and Oklahoma, and then gradually a new low forms off the southeast coast. And you see, at least on the GFS is not doesn't always handle these southern systems very well. On the other side of the equation, though, is the NAM model, which actually goes somewhat impressive with the low in the southeast. So I'll just bring it out on the NAM, where you got the same idea of this east-west high stretched out. And again, the frustrating part of all of this, I guess, for snow lovers, is the fact that you are going to have this you're going to have cold air around all over the place, but now you've got too much of it, and it's too far south. It's going to sit. Everything is suppressed, so you wind up with a flat wave that develops, and you see it here off the South Carolina coast Thursday night with snow in northern South Carolina, virtually all of North Carolina, including the coast, not quite to the Outer Banks, but it eventually even gets there and on into southern Virginia. I mean, maybe the NAM is overdone, Joe, and the GFS is probably a little bit underdone. So let's just kind of split the difference here. And by the way, if you look at the upper air, you can actually see what's happening. You finally have something coming down out of Canada with cold air, but it just suppresses. Look at this. I mean, this is hysterical. Now you've got uh, I guess you could call it a not quite a fire hose, but you've got this sort of straight, flat west to east flow south of 35 degrees north, and now the northern part of the jet stream has gotten so strong that it just flattens everything out like a gigantic weight and shoves everything out underneath us.
Joe, I got to tell you, it is. I think it's more or less a certainty or a surety that our part of the country, the tri-state New York City area, is probably not going to see much of anything in terms of snowfall from now through the end of February. And the big question now is this pattern going to persist to a degree where we go through the month of March with no snowfall? In other words, when I took my snowblower out today, will it be the last time I have to need any need to take it out for the rest of this season?
Right.
It's really. I honestly don't see anything. We were talking about maybe a little bit of a crack appearing maybe by the end of the month or the beginning of March, but
Right.
that's a minuscule crack the way it's beginning to
Oh, and
look.
listen, and it could wind up getting that crack in the window may wind up getting slammed shut in a hurry. Here's the I widened out to the whole North America view, and the this is one of these times. This is one of the windows that we talked about in the last couple of weeks, where you get that short period of time where there's a Canadian connection bringing down cold air from northern Canada down into the Great Lakes and Northeast. You see it set up here. The problem is that now you've got too much going on in eastern Canada in the upper air. The jet stream suppressed pretty far to the south, and all the whatever short waves there are in the southern stream, they're getting stretched out and kind of squashed here. So there's nothing. There's you've got west winds from Alabama, Mississippi, and Alabama off the Carolina coast going straight out to the Azores. So any wave that develops is not going to be able to turn up the East Coast. And then, of course, what happens? That trough lifts out. You get a bit of a ridge that builds into early next week. And then, at least from the standpoint of the upper air, Joe, the Canadian connection does come back again toward the end of the month. But the problem is going to be, if you're going to have cold air coming down or some cold air coming down, it's got to time out with something in the southern jet. And now I'm looking at this and you're seeing all this action just kind of cutting off of California and staying out there. The northern jet is dropping weather systems into the eastern part of the United States, but what is it going to have to work with? It does have a much colder look as we get into the first 4 or 5 days of March. But again, I just go back to it doesn't do you any good unless you've got something there that times out with it. I think it's possible, given everything that's going on, but you're going to have it perfect.
May I say that we're getting hosed? this,
Well, that,
or the
that
snow lovers, or the snow lovers are getting hosed, so to
and
speak.
that goes without saying. By the way, just to backtrack here, I want to bring that hemispheric view up. Good, we're 21 minutes in, and we haven't been thrown off the live stream yet. But I just want to go back to we had Storm Dennis. Somebody made this point, and I think it's so valid. How awful is it that you've got a 9-6? Well, I think Timothy Veltman said the pressure got down to 919. Okay, the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane in terms of pressure. And this is Storm Dennis back how you see it in the upper air on Saturday. Okay, now you you would think if you could have something of that magnitude, that it should be enough to change the pattern. And if you follow it along, now I've moved it to Tuesday morning, so just a handful of hours from now. Dennis at this point is sitting on the north coast of Siberia. And as we roll it along, as I'm going to roll this along, hang on a second, folks. So let's roll it along. It just kind of sits there and eventually just sort of moves its way southeastward across the North Pole and just sort of rotates around. You'd think a storm of that magnitude would help to change the pattern, or radically change the pattern. I think it's having some impact here because you notice these troughs later in the forecast period start to come into the eastern states on a more regular basis. But it's a tough sell here that you've got something so strong like that doesn't take the upper air pattern and flip it all around. It just goes to show you just how horribly locked in we are with this all the cold air that's locked up in the Arctic region.
I don't know why, but all of a sudden, while we were talking about this cold air locked in and something like Dennis trying to break it down or whatever. I don't know why this popped into my head, but all of a sudden I had this mental picture of Jack Haley playing the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. It's that sequence toward the latter part of the movie where they're trying to rescue Dorothy, and he pushes the lion and the scarecrow back, takes his axe out, and starts banging at the door of
Yes.
the Wicked Witch. He said, "Hold on!" Bam, 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 and that's I don't know why, but that's it's like the impenetrable wall here with
Yeah.
this pattern, and Dennis is doing his best, like the Tin Man, of trying to break this all down. But if it does break down, it's going to break down very, very slowly. It appear.
By the way, I'm revisiting the fire hose here, and I was talking with I spoke to my uncle today, who had just gone to Italy, and he just flew back. Uh, the flight to Italy wound up being about 7 hours. Okay, which is six and a half or 7 hours. It was an hour and a half faster. Okay,
Hmm.
the return flight, which is usually longer, that's usually about an 8 hour flight back from Milan, wound up being close to 11 hours because they had to
Right, because
fight.
you're going into that headwind.
Right, they had to fight that headwind, and here's the fire hose on over the weekend. Now that weakens somewhat, and as we move through the forecast period, it sort of strengthens again late next week briefly, and it doesn't go back to what we just had. The extreme nature of that NAO being up at plus 5 or 600 or whatever it was, four or five standard deviations above the mean. That's the reason why you had a 919 low southeast of Iceland with this storm that went and impacted Great Britain with the flooding and the winds and the wreaking havoc there. So that's the consequence of having the atmosphere so out of whack. When those teleconnections are as out of whack as they were, you're going to have strange things happen, and that's what happened this weekend.
And this is not just we were talking about transatlantic flights. This is not just confined to the to transatlantic flights. A friend of mine took note of the fact that she was traveling from Los Angeles to Boston, and it only took her like 4.5 hours, and she was amazed because that's so much quicker than normal
Oh
on
yeah,
a flight.
the
So it's
fast,
it's also happening over the contiguous
sure.
United States.
Right, that fast flow is no good because these whatever cold air we have, and you look at what happened Friday into Saturday. That cold air came in, and it was pretty much done by the time we got to Saturday afternoon. We rebounded from low teens and single digits to the low and mid 30s for highs Saturday afternoon. I mean, that's how fast that cold air came in. and went out. Let me just put up the snowfall forecast map from the Weather Service. This goes to Thursday evening, but all of this that you see in the Northeast is really for tomorrow and into tomorrow night, early Wednesday. So New England and upstate New York, it looks like a 2 to 4, 3 to 6 inch event for this for areas north of I-90. You've got some elevated amounts where you see some higher numbers show up. Right, they got an 11 for Syracuse, right up 80 where 81 and 90 meet. They got an 11-inch print there, and heavy snows between there and Rochester, north of I-90. And then you go up into New England and up into Maine. It's another 3 to 6 inch event for the great state of Maine and for most of New Hampshire except the extreme south, and about 2 to 4 for much of Vermont, a coating to an inch across northern Pennsylvania, north of Route 80. And, they've got a coating to an inch down from Route 84 northward. I don't know, Joe. A precip comes in tomorrow morning. Um, you know, by that time, I mean, I don't know. The temperatures should all be above critical, and it's not like you're getting a heavy burst of precip to cool the atmosphere down. Maybe somebody sees some ice pellets at the start, but I'm not really overly enthused by it.
Maybe it's a CYA forecast.
Yeah, pretty much. Great
Yeah.
Lakes, looking at where we have the winter weather advisories up. Also looks like generally a 3 to 6 inch snowfall, but higher amounts up Route 75 up through Michigan, and also on the Upper Peninsula, where, well, that's another part of the country like Maine. It's not exactly breaking news when it snows up there. And in the Rockies, looking at 3 for Denver here. Uh, Again, this is probably from that from that upslope. East wind snows for later in the week. Uh, from 25 east is where the heavier snows are, as opposed to last week when they were west of Route of 25. Now they're going to be east of 25.